Tyler Henry, or the Hollywood medium, is another in a long line of con artists. Like vultures, they prey on people who are at their most vulnerable and usually grieving for a loved one. The fraud, Tyler Henry, performs the obvious cold reading tactic where he picks up on little details in conversation to make it look like he knows specific things about you and your life. In this case, Tyler Henry is using a method known as hot reading, where he has gathered information about the client prior to the meeting. It is obvious that Tyler Henry simply looks up any celebrity online and plays them for a fool, making it appear that the spirit world gave him information, when in fact, he is just listing off things he found online. There is a reason Tyler decides to read only celebrities, because he can find information online about them easily.
We've had Tyler on the show before to do some readings, and he always insists on not knowing who his subject will be. So while I didn't know what to expect from our conversation, neither did he.
Here we see another of Tyler Henry's methods of deception. He claims to have no idea who he is going to read prior to the meeting. You will notice Tyler pretending to act surprised to see Matt Lauer, when in reality, he had already planned this entire reading out in advance. He does this so it appears that the deceased are giving him information, when in reality, he just did research online. Luckily, this method is very easy to see through, and only a fool would believe it. You cannot possibly think that Tyler knows absolutely nothing about his clients prior to the meeting. It is so painfully obvious that Tyler is a scam artist and a fraud. His acting is very bad, and any reasonable person will be able to see through it.
Hello.
Hello, Tyler. How are you?
Wow, how are you, Matt?
I'm great.
Gosh, it's great to see you.
What a pleasure to see you again. How have you been?
I've been amazing. How have you been?
I've been nervous. I don't understand the process, to be perfectly honest with you.
Okay, I'll explain it. The way that this works is that you'll watch me scribble, and I just do this. And this is kind of my way of forgetting my surroundings and kind of distracting myself and focusing on a central point so that I can kind of pick up on subtle impressions that come through. I've found in this practice that sometimes holding onto an object will actually make a stronger connection with a particular person. Ultimately, anybody can come through. It could be someone connected to the object. I might bring through people that aren't connected to the object.
Tyler started by asking for a pocket knife I'd brought. He didn't know it once belonged to my maternal grandfather. But as he had just explained, sometimes other people insist on making their presence known.
Wow, okay, so I have a few people coming through, but I first want to start with this man who is insisting to connect. This doesn't come through as like a grandfather, but this is coming through in a fatherly kind of an essence.
Here we see Tyler shotgunning out a vague statement, in hopes that it will hit something. He is doing nothing more than making a guess. It's obvious that the pocket knife would belong to a male, especially if it's older. Notice how Tyler never specifically mentions dad or grandfather. He only gives out a vague statement, a fatherly essence. This statement can be interpreted in many different ways. Tyler is merely hoping that Matt can identify with that statement, and give him more information, at which point, he will make it seem like he knew all along that it was his dad, when in fact, all he ever said was fatherly essence, which again, is extremely vague.
Okay, this man is immediately going to have me talk about the passing. Let's see what this is. I'm definitely getting more so a reference to a progressive decline in health. And he showed me the symbol of a phone being held to one's ear when they're in an unconscious state and being told, like, it's okay to be able to pass. When they show that symbol, that to me always acknowledges, you know, that they were ultimately told by family, it's okay, like, you don't have to hold on. And there's a feeling of appreciation with where he was when he actually died. There's a feeling of appreciation. It's like, I refuse to die surrounded by doctors, dying in a hospital, withering away.
This statement is very generalized. After all, not very many people would want to spend their final days withering away in a hospital. It is a very normal thing for one to want to pass in their own residence. But because this statement applies to Matt's father, Tyler will then claim that the information was given to him by the deceased. If anything, this proves that Tyler is a vampire, feeding off of the grief of others, so that his TV show can bring him more money. I would also like to mention that if Tyler is really communicating with Matt's deceased father, how come he is only focusing on the passing? It seems like Tyler is just trying to make Matt believe that he is authentic, rather than actually convey important messages. You'd think that in all the time Matt knew his father would have mentioned something important? A long-held secret? Or maybe just any specific event in their lives. Instead, Tyler just focuses on vague and obvious statements, proving he is a fraud.
Whether he knew it or not, Tyler was talking about my father, who passed away in 1997. At his request, he spent the last few weeks of his life at home, under hospice care.
He is thankful for the steps that were taken for him to not pass away in a traditional kind of facility. That's really important for him.
You will notice that Tyler Henry has provided no useful information so far. All he has done is talk about feelings and emotions. Not once has he mentioned any information that isn't painfully obvious or generalized. What about Matt's other family members? Wouldn't they be trying to contact him as well? Something about this is not adding up. You can see that Tyler has managed to fill up most of the reading we see here with vague statements and fairly useless information. In a second you will see Tyler mention coins. This statement can mean absolutely anything. It could mean that his father had a coin collection, or even that he just collected spare change, which most people do. We find out that he had some dollar coins, which is not that uncommon. Lots of people have dollar coins. Like everything else Tyler has said, this information is completely useless, and serves only as false validation that Tyler can really contact the deceased.
That comes across. So I know it's a lot to take in. I haven't asked what makes sense and what doesn't thus far, but
A lot of it makes sense.
Good.
A lot of it.
Good. So strange. He's showing me a reference to like a coin, and I don't know why this is coming through in the way that it is, but he's showing me, and it may not click right now, but he's referencing to these coins, and it's a coin collection. It's like a very random, specific, old, archaic thing.
I have a couple of silver dollars from him, but not a lot.
Okay.
Just a couple.
There's actually a reference to having 3, and then I feel like I have to acknowledge either missing 1 or misplacing 1, and then I talk about 2. How many do you have knowingly?
I think I have 2.
Okay, well there's a 3rd.
I think I have 2.
Yes. He's just showing me a vision of a bird flying into a house and having to get this bird and like trap this bird. It is the funniest thing. I don't know if we have to like run up and like grab a box and like capture it and throw it out, but there's a funny instance about this, and it is specific, so I have to verbalize it. It's random details like that that can sometimes validate that someone is coming through and that they're around us. So
We've had that happen.
that's happened.
Another one of Tyler's cheap tricks can be seen here. He is mentioning a bird getting trapped in a house. This is also a pretty common thing, and I'm sure it has happened to most people at least one point in their lives. Even if this didn't click with Matt, Tyler would most likely have just made up some stupid, vague description to go with it, for example, if it symbolizes something. Again, Tyler provides no useful or very specific information. Everything he says appears to be specific, but if you look a bit deeper, you can see that it is vague and nothing out of the ordinary.
Tyler says his abilities also include a sensitivity to people's medical conditions, and he picked something up from me.
Do you mind if we talk about health that's nothing serious?
No, not at all.
So you have a susceptibility to something called sleep apnea. It's good to keep in mind. Well, your entire dad's side of family is coming through and having me joke about this.
It has been brought to my attention that I might snore just a little bit. Just a little bit.
That's all right.
This may appear to be at first a very specific and accurate hit on Tyler's part. However, it is no secret that Matt has a sleep-related condition. He has mentioned this in interviews and talk shows on many different occasions. This is a clear example of the swindler, Tyler, attempting to perform a hot reading. However, he is not as experienced as others, and therefore you can see through it fairly easily.
Sleep issues aside, Tyler said my dad did have another message.
There's a reference to fishing, but he's talking about being spoken out loud to. I know what this is actually. I don't know if you're aware of this, but he's acknowledging that an individual will be out on a boat, and I feel like I'm sitting alone and I'm fishing, and I'm thinking Dad. And he's having me acknowledge this feeling of like, I'm there with you, I'm there with you.
You know, my dad shared 2 passions with me. He shared golf and fishing.
Nice.
And I do go out and fish a lot alone on a boat. And this idea that might be a time to communicate with him, or that he's attempting to communicate, is phenomenal to me, because I spent a lot of time doing that.
Like with the sleep problem, it is also no secret that Matt Lauer likes fishing. He has mentioned it many times. It sounds like Tyler just wants everyone to believe that he is accurate, when in reality, he is just poorly hot reading all the famous people he meets. Tyler Henry is very clearly a swindler and a charlatan. He lacks experience with cold reading like other mediums and psychics are able to do. Instead, Tyler focuses on hot reading all his subjects, but eventually, he might have to read regular people. And not through Facebook, because he can easily find information through people's Facebook profiles. It's not a surprise he does all of his giveaways through Facebook. Tyler is a fraud, a phony, and a charlatan.
Your father is so immensely proud of you. You didn't have to get where you are today for him to be proud of you. And you didn't have to get where you are today to be successful in his eyes. Because he views you as successful regardless. I hope that gives some insight.
We can conclude from this video that Tyler Henry has not proven that he has any psychic abilities whatsoever. It is clear that he is a swindler and a charlatan and his tactics are very flawed. He is a leech, feeding off of the grief and sadness of others, all for his own profit. Help spread awareness to stop this vampire. I look forward to reading your comments. Subscribe to hear the truth about the Hollywood medium and remember, stay aware of these con artists.